Motherhood is all-consuming.
Having babies, nursing, feeling the fear of loving someone that much.
And there's this baby on your chest, and boom, your entire life has changed.
It's a privilege of being your child's safest space and watching your heart walk around outside of your body.
The truth is, I can be having the best time being a mum 1 minute, and then the next I'm questioning all my life choices.
I'm Lo Mansfield, your host of the Lo and Behold podcast. Mama of 4 littles, former labor and postpartum RN, CLC, and your new best friend in the messy middle space of all the choices you are making in pregnancy, birth, and motherhood. If there is one thing I know after years of delivering babies at the bedside and then having and now raising those 4 of my own, it is that there is no such thing as a best way to do any of this. And we're leaning into that truth here. With a mix of real life and what the textbook says, expert insights, and practical applications, each week we're making our way towards stories that we participate in, stories that we are honest about, and stories that are ours. This is the Lo and Behold podcast.
I am back this week with another birth story. And if you were here with me last week, you know that I used that first podcast episode as a chance to share my own first birth story and kind of give you guys an idea of who I am, where I'm coming from, where this passion came from, what my story is, what's brought me to this place. And while my first birth story doesn't tell you exactly who I am, I don't think our births define who we are. They can be a pretty integral part of who we are. And so I chose to start with my first birth story last week as a way to hopefully, quote unquote, get to know me, right? You learn more about me, my passions, my loves, where my story is going from that first story. This week, am going to share another birth story with you. It's not mine. It's actually my older sister's. And the reason I want to tuck her story right here at the front of all of this as well is because Jenn's birth story happened to be a birth that I attended. I was there as sister, but I was also actually on the clock working as a nurse. And that specific birth, my precious niece, she was actually the first baby that I saw be born as a registered nurse. I was a brand new grad. I was in training, and my sister came into the hospital I worked at in labor, and I ended up stepping into the room, getting to be there, not as a nurse. I was technically not working, but I was working. But I was there to be there, support, love, and honestly cry my way through her birth and the birth of my niece. So I just wanted to tuck Jenn's story in here early because it feels foundational to who I am and the beginning of my entire nursing career and journey, and kind of those little seedlings, I guess, of passion and love for this space and getting to watch people and help people do this. So this conversation today, again, is with my older sister, Jenn. So Jenn, why don't you go ahead and introduce yourself first, and then we'll keep going.
Yeah. Hi, my name's Jenn. I am wife of Michael. I'm the mother of my daughter named Reese, who is 12 years old now. So when Laura asked me to come on and talk about my birth story, my first thought was that was so long ago. But it is funny, and there are pieces of it that I can recall in a heartbeat. And so excited to share it with you today.
Yeah, I like that Jenn said that it's funny because we die laughing when we talk about this birth story, and it's probably, you guys know, stuff is more funny when it's you, right? But we're hoping, or hopefully we're not laughing alone. You can let us know if we are, because there are parts of it that just still crack me up today when we go back and we talk about it. So you'll probably hear us laugh maybe a little more than some of the other birth stories, but that's a good thing, right? Okay, so let's just get started at the beginning. Jenn, just tell us about pregnancy, wanting to get pregnant, all of that jazz.
Yeah. So my husband, Michael, and I had been married for 5 years at this point, and I felt like everyone in my group of friends was pregnant or had already gotten pregnant and had babies, and I was really ready for that. My husband wasn't, and it took a while for us to get to a space. And I won't even say that he was ready when we did have our daughter, but he was more ready than if we had jumped into it when my heart was ready. And so as these things go, it was not as easy as I had hoped. I just thought, have sex, get pregnant the first time, and did not work like that. It took us about 6 months to get pregnant. And once I got pregnant, I was really nervous to tell my husband because, as much as he was like, yes, we can do this, I mean, obviously a huge change, right? Like our whole life's changing in a heartbeat. And so I'm going to laugh at this. And I am going to preface, Laura knows this. I love my husband dearly. We've been married almost 20 years. We are also the two most different people you will ever meet.
I can attest to this. I love him dearly as well, but
we are very different.
Very
I am excited and joyful, and I'm an Enneagram 2, and I have big feelings about everything. And he is not those things. So got a positive pregnancy test, was so excited. And I get up. At this point in my life, I woke up really early to go to work really early. I was at work at 6 a.m. And so got that positive pregnancy test, was so excited. And I should have known this was the wrong time, but I wanted to tell Michael immediately, of course. And so I go to our bedroom and I'm like, Michael, wake up. He's like, what? And I'm like, look, we're pregnant. And I swear to God, I kid you not, he would verify if he was here. He looked at me and he said, can we talk about this later? And he rolled over and went back to bed. And I was like, I was so angry, but also like, my husband is well into his 40s and he could sleep until 11 o'clock on any given Saturday still. Like, I should have known that, like, an early morning conversation that should have been met with so much joy for me just was not going to land for him. So I left that pregnancy test on his counter next to his toothbrush and I went to work and, got home, had some hurt feelings, worked through it, made a baby. My pregnancy was pretty uneventful. I had some morning sickness, some nausea, nothing terrible. I gained a lot of weight, as we often do when we're pregnant. I'm tall. I'm really tall, so I felt like I held that really well. I had a big old belly. It was super uneventful. She went almost full term. We were just a couple days shy of 40 weeks when she came. And yeah, when it was time for her to come, you just can't prepare, right? You read the books, you take the classes, you listen to the things, and then you drive to the hospital and like your whole world changes just like that.
Remind me if you took classes or not. I can't remember.
Well, no, we didn't. That husband, who I love dearly, does not maybe operate under the same idea of like knowledge is power. And education, makes things feel easier and more smooth. And this is not a husband bashing moment by any means, but my husband was disgusted by pregnancy also. I feel like that is just a fair thing to mention. He would not touch my belly. He told me it was like an alien lived inside of me. He did not want to watch it move. He didn't want to see when she would kick. He didn't want to feel it. Like, he was so freaked out over all things pregnancy and the pregnant body. And I mean, I thought it was miraculous. I'm like that lady who wants to touch every pregnant belly. Like, I'm in an elevator and you're pregnant. I'm like, oh my God, you look so, can I touch it? Like, I just am like Laura. Like, Laura's enamored with birth, and I'm so enamored with like that process and like the amazing ability of our bodies to like do this. And so he was disgusted by all things, and he's super smart, like graduate degree, like he's brilliant, but like did not want any knowledge about this part of life. And so, no, we went to the hospital. I don't think he read I read like every book that like existed under the sun, had all my friends who'd already had babies, had talked to all of them. He had -10 knowledge going into birth and pregnancy. And I think he may have regretted that when the time came, honestly. So
I think it's important to interject here. Obviously, you all know that I teach, and I always am saying, get your partners involved, get your partners involved, get your partners involved. But like Jen keeps saying, I love my brother-in-law. He makes me laugh more than anyone on the planet. I love this man. But he's also not abnormal. There are a lot of dads, partners out there who are not interested in any of this. And so, yes, I'm sure if Jen could go back, she'd still say, hey, like, get involved. Can we get you to do a little more here? But I think it's important to realize that if the person helping you have your baby is maybe like my brother-in-law, they're not the only one like that. They're not the only one being obstinate, trying to be frustrating, annoying, refusing. Like, sometimes they're just built that way, designed that way. Can we lean into that? Can we change that? Can we try to get them on board more? Should we? Yes. But you're not the only one if you're going through this, or if your story sounds a little like Jen's, like, I just want you to hear that. Like, not every partner is just going to show up and want to catch the baby. And, even with education, they're not always going to want to show up like that. And that is a very normal, typical scenario too. So just had to throw that in there because Michael is not the only one who shows up like this, or really just doesn't really want to show up at all. So
something I think is interesting about that is while he did not want to like participate in any education or like preparedness per se, he also was really adamant that he wanted to do it alone. He didn't want my mom to come for the birth. He did not want Laura to be there. Laura was a nurse, I'm sure we'll get into this, at the hospital, like where we delivered Reese, but he did not want her, he didn't want her to be there. Like for him, it was really important that like he did it, and that like he knew that if my mom was there or if Laura was there, that he would back off and let them do the things because he was going to be uncomfortable and it'd be easier to let them do it. And so I appreciate that like he knew himself enough to say like, hey, I think everyone needs to be gone. It'd just be you and me when we have Reese so that I can learn and so that I have to like rise to that occasion. Right. So
yeah, which I mean, I do think he knew himself well enough to know that. Obviously it played out in like its own funny ways, but, and I will say we didn't fully fill you in on that, but I was a baby nurse when Jenn was pregnant. So I moved to Colorado in the fall. I can't remember if I told y'all, but I actually lived with them. And so I started working at the hospital where she was going to deliver her baby about, I would say 6-8 weeks or so before she came in to have the baby. And so when she came in, and yes, I was working that night, I was still training as a postpartum nurse. So my hospital started us as postpartum nurses. Once we got comfortable taking care of mom baby couplets, then they started training us fully for labor as well. So when Jenn came in, I was not her labor nurse. I was not like fully ready to care for someone in labor on my own as a nurse yet. I obviously got to be there, and you'll hear the rest of that. But I was technically working that night. I had 3 mom baby couplets. I was finishing up my postpartum training, but I was there, and that was obviously just random chance.
And it was your last shift before you had like a few days off too. I remember like,
I think so.
yes.
Because I remember going home and sleeping, but then you guys came home and it was like nice to be, maybe that wasn't nice for you. I don't know. I was home with their sweet baby and them, but anyway, okay. So yes, that brings us up to basically
the hospital
labor starting or what happened. I'm sure you can remember some of those pre-details too of getting to the hospital and why.
Yes. I think one of the things that I remember most vividly is the drive we took to the hospital from our house, which was like, I don't even know, 5 minutes max. But there was this very clear feeling to Michael and I that like this was the last time it was going to just be us. And that gives me goosebumps still. And that almost makes me want to cry. But I just remember this very vivid, like, oh, we've had a good run of Michael and Jenn. And now we're about to be like Michael, Jenn, and Reese, like a family. And there was just something super surreal about like that drive. It was dark. It was nighttime. When we got to the hospital, it was like right post dinner. And there was just this sweet moment of him and I in the car driving to the hospital and being like, this is the last time it'll ever just be you and I. So that's just one of those things that has like stuck with me, 12 years later, I still can like go right back to that scene. So we get to the hospital, and I guess I went to triage earlier in the day because I was like, it's a long time ago.
I was wondering if you were going to remember this part because I
was bleeding a little bit. And so we went to triage. They monitored me or whatever and was like, contractions weren't really happening. I wasn't dilated at all, maybe a 1. And they were like, nah, you're like, go home, rest, like not time yet, And I was like, okay. And I didn't go home because I had stuff to do. I planned on going to work the next morning. And so went to Costco, did some grocery shopping, and then came home and made a pot of soup. And then I started bleeding pretty significantly. And so I called like the triage department again, and they were like, why don't you go ahead and come on in now? Like, this is something we want to monitor. And so that is how we ended up like coming back to the hospital. Is that right?
Yeah, I was at work. So it must have been like 7, 8, 9. Because I remember you texting and saying, hey, I'm coming back in.
Yep.
After you'd spoken to the triage nurse or whoever.
Yeah.
So.
So we get to the hospital, they put us in a room, but again, I still wasn't really dilated or anything and like wasn't really feeling contractions. Like I felt fine. I was just bleeding pretty significantly. And so they told us to get a good night's sleep. They gave me Ambien to sleep, I think. And they were like, get some sleep. And in the morning, we will start Pitocin, see if we can get contractions going and deliver this baby. So that's like, whatever. Laura's there. She worked nights. So like you pretty much just came into your shift. So you were there and like, popped in and said hi. Michael's trying to sleep. My husband loves sleep so much. So he's like on the crinkly bed, that they pull out, the little couch bed. And we are lying there. It's the middle of the night and my water breaks. And it was the loudest sound I've ever heard in my life. It sounded like a gunshot. It was, and I know some people you don't hear anything. Mine exploded and my husband shot up out of bed and his eyes were like big as saucers. And he's like, what was that? And I was like, oh, I think my water just broke. And he was like, okay. And he runs out of our little room out into the hallway. And thankfully Laura was sitting at the desk charting or something. And Laura, do you want to tell this part? Because I love when you tell what he looked like when he came out.
I just still remember his face. And obviously when it's family, you probably memorialize that memory even more. But his eyes were like saucers. And actually I've seen a lot of dads come out of rooms looking like that. But I think he didn't even have the words. It was our water, I think our water broke. He didn't know. And everyone around me, my preceptor, I remember her sitting next to me and it was like, okay, we'll be right in. Everyone, it's kind of that whole, all right, that's okay. It's very normal, but you forget, no one was rude.
No,
but
he's it's an emergency.
To
Come now.
This is the biggest deal in the entire world, right? And then to all of us, we're like, great, okay. Although I will say, the plan was to have Jenn just sleep overnight. So what they had thought was that she was having a little bit of an abruption, which is when the placenta kind of starts to separate from the uterine wall too soon, right? It's not supposed to happen until after birth. And so it can cause some bleeding. This was not significant. It was not a need for immediate delivery, but that was why they thought, hey, when your OB gets here in the morning, we'll start inducing you because you are abrupting a little bit, it looks like. So let's get this baby delivered. And so you got to get, I give Mike a little credit. The plan of care was, you guys sleep. Everything will start in the morning. So I'm sure his brain was thinking, this is not supposed to be happening. They told us to go to sleep, And so I think it was kind of that more oh, shoot, it really is happening now too. And so Jenn obviously had just taken these sleeping pills and then her water breaks. And so it wasn't exactly what was supposed to happen, which that's birth, right? So anyways, you can keep going.
So water broke. They came in, cleaned me up because my water broke like a freaking river, the Rio Grande came out and got cleaned up. And then labor generally is a lot of hurry up and wait. And so it's okay, my water broke, but still didn't really have significant contractions, wasn't really feeling any pain. And so okay, go ahead and try and rest some more, And so my husband goes back asleep, no problem for him. And I'm lying there and I have to go to the bathroom, right? And so I'm feeling great on my own. I get up, go to the bathroom, and I poop and start shaking. All of a sudden, my body is shaking and I'm oh, something is happening. This feels weird. So I call the nurse and she's like, you're not supposed to go to the bath. I wasn't supposed to go poop on my own, whatever. All of these things that I didn't take any birth classes. I just was taking care of my business. And so that was my transition. And from that moment on, it was the most to me, it was so rapid fire and so quick. I went from no contractions, feeling 100% fine really, to being well, we're going to have a baby, this is really happening. So I had wanted an epidural, and I'll say again, I'm old and I had my baby a long time ago. And I didn't have a real birth plan. Most people now going with a birth plan and you've got your music and you've got your things. I had none of that. We had no plan. I just wanted to have a baby. I was just going to have a baby, She didn't even have a name. We didn't even know what we were going to name her. And so I wasn't tied fast and loose to not having an epidural or having an epidural or delivering in a bathtub or standing. I didn't care. I had no plan. And so I was that's why there's nurse. They're going to tell me what to do and I'm just going to do what they tell me, right? I'm not the first woman to walk into that space with that intention, I'm sure, mindset. And so I get back in bed. I labored in bed the whole time. And the dearest labor and delivery nurse. Her name was Lindsay. I would recognize her on the street still to this day. And she was going to be like my Sherpa, like guiding me through contractions and like, this is where it's going to get good, guys. How to breathe. Because literally, I didn't take Lamaze classes. I don't think they call them that anymore, but whatever you guys call them now. That's what my brain remembers, the math.
My sister knows so much about what I do, guys.
You know,
Just kidding.
I only had one baby also. I didn't get a lot of practice at this. And so at this point.
Well, you got an epidural.
Oh, yeah. Oh, my God. I did. So I got an epidural. I wanted an epidural. It's like 2 a.m. probably at this point.
Yeah.
And I wish Michael was here to tell this part because I love the way he tells the story. So the gentleman who came in to give me his epidural, I do remember his name, but I'll give him some anonymity right now.
I thought we shouldn't say it.
No, he came in to give me my epidural and he had been asleep because it's nighttime. Like they're on call or whatever, you know? And Michael tells it. I didn't see it, but Michael tells it. He walked in and he was like, oh, like big yawn, like just waking himself up as he walks in my room. And then like that needle, apparently, I didn't see it again, but apparently it's pretty big. And, you know, so Michael was like, this guy's going to put that needle in my wife's back. Like he's not even awake. What's happening here? So thankfully I'm oblivious to this because like I'm just in my own body at this point, you know? And so get my epidural, like not a big deal, laid back down in bed. At this point, I was dilated pretty significantly, I feel like, if I remember correctly, and just kind of waiting for a contraction to come to start pushing. Is that yes? Sound right?
You know, I don't fully remember when I was allowed to come in because things changed and then you guys decided. So maybe you can tell that part. I just know that it was so quick, right? And so, like she said, you went from the assumption was not really dilated to water broke. Okay, that means something's happening. And then all of a sudden it was like she's shaking, she's pooping. Like these are signs of transition. For a first-time mother, we're talking about like an hour has transpired, you know? And so I think it was more, I don't know how dilated you were, but it was clear we're not going to make it till morning for the doctor to get here type thing. Like something's happening really fast here. And so I don't know if you remember when you decided like I could come in or, you know, Ish was getting real or whatever.
So I think the point where it was when like we were going to start pushing. So probably like right around that epidural point, like that had happened. And then it was like, oh, we're having a baby like soon. And they like called the on-call doctor, like no one was in. So they had to like call whoever was on call, which of course was not my doctor because that's the way it always seems to work, right? And Lindsay, my nurse, is like getting me set up in bed to push. And, you know, they pull your knees up to, like this, again, very like OG style birth, I feel like pull your knees up to your chest and your husband holds one. And I think that is when my husband was like, actually didn't sign up for this. I'm out. Can Laura come in and help
for the
us out
audience,
here?
she's throwing up peace signs because her husband peaced out.
Bye. Yeah. I think that was like more of any of my body he ever wanted to like be up close and personal with. He did not want it. He was afraid. I think he was afraid. I really think he was afraid he would pass out and he did not want that to be his story. And so at this point I'm like, yes, Laura, like Laura can come in. Cause they were like really respectful of our privacy. Like Laura wasn't my nurse. They knew she was my sister, but like, it was my choice. Like, did I want her to be part of our story? And if so, she was like, she wasn't working because there's, I'm sure some legalities or whatever around that. Like she came in just to be like she was like my support person because my husband was not able to be my support person at that point. And so it comes time to push. And I don't understand how to breathe. We're going to laugh a lot here. I could not everything's happening so fast and you feel panicky and like all this is changing in your body and people are talking to you and there's so much going on around you. And so I don't even know if I can remember how to do it now, to be really honest with you. But Lindsay's telling me how to breathe, like to hold in a breath and then push, like bear down and push, right? And I was like, okay, I'm like shaking my head like, yes, I understand. I got it. And then she'd be like, okay, contraction, you know, take a big breath and push. And I would take a breathe. I'd take a big breath in and then I wouldn't hold it. I'd blow it out like horse lips. Like that's literally like what I remember. They'd be like, Jen, you hold your breath and push. Do you understand? And I'd be like, yeah, I get it. And she's like, okay, push. And I'd breathe in, big breath. And I just blow it all out like over and over. And I swear, I'm sure Lindsay was like, what? Like I was out of my mind.
But here's actually the funny part too, is there's the type of pushing that's coach pushing, guided pushing, like what you're talking about, like hold your breath, and push and bear down. And there actually is the other, which is what you were doing. Not, I would say you weren't doing it effectively, but it's like breathing your baby down. Now, could you have gotten to there where you were, yeah, like that's what, if we're teaching that type of breathing, it's like, no, you breathe them out. You actually do. Like horse lips breathing is it's a real breathing
It's
style.
above my
Look at
time.
you were. So I think it's funny because at the time it was hilarious. I feel like even in that moment, you somehow knew that you weren't doing anything effective, but you also were doing a breathing pushing style that a lot of people want to try, is this like down breathing. I think you didn't know all the nuance, you hadn't practiced, whatever. So it was just comical because you just thought, I'm doing great, aren't I? And everyone was like, well, nothing's really going on. But
Isn't it funny how our bodies
yes,
know? Like even with no,
yes,
like even if it wasn't what I was supposed to do or like
you're
what Lindsay
breathing.
was coaching me to
Yeah.
do, like my body on some level knew like that this will
Breathe
make it
during
happen,
this
like that this will
contraction.
work.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah. Even if the technique was questionable. So I've got Laura on one knee, I've got Lindsay on the other knee, and my husband is hovering really kind of like in the hallway outside the door. And I remember the charge nurse.
It was
I
my
cannot remember her
preceptor.
name, but I can.
Yeah.
Yeah, your preceptor. And I vividly remember her grabbing Michael and like pushing him into the room and be like, your daughter is going to be born. Like, you need to get in there. And he was like a head of the bed guy. Like, he's back here. He doesn't want to be down here. So like she pushed him in, and I'm glad he did. Like, he would have stayed out there until the bitter end, but she got him in there. And honestly, I had a really easy delivery. I had like 3 real pushes, and Reese was born. She was 8 pounds, 1 ounce, really beautiful cone head. She came out like fast and furious. Not a lot of time, I think, in the birth canal. Like, so everything just like, whoosh, she came out so quick. And Michael did not want to catch her. Michael did not catch her. And they did ask him to cut the umbilical cord, which I do believe he ended up doing, but not without like great dismay. I think he would have chosen not to, but perhaps he felt a little pressure, which good for him. So he did cut her umbilical cord. Now 12 years later, I've been like, oh, don't cut that umbilical cord. Let her stay here for an hour. But we didn't know those things then. And so cut the cord, then you're all of a sudden you're a family of 3. Like we had talked, like just in like a breath, you go from Jenn and Michael to like, oh, like there's 3 of us now. And then, all of that like fun post-birth stuff, like got to get the placenta out. And I did tear. She came so fast. Oh, I want to say this because I know you don't get a gold star for like having a no medicated birth and all that jazz, but also, so I got my epidural, but Reese was born like within an hour of getting that epidural. And it was not like that epidural had not really kicked in. So like when she went to stitch me up, I so clearly remember her like going to stitch my tear and being like, I can feel that. And the doctor saying, no, you can't. You had an epidural. And I was like, yes, I can. Like I can feel that. And so then they had to, is it Novocaine? It's the same as a
Probably
dentist.
lidocaine. That's what we were using.
That
yeah.
sounds better.
Yeah.
Yeah. So they, so then I and I was able to like get up out of bed and go to the bathroom and stuff. There was no like long, like I was not immobile by any means from that epidural, and stitched me up. And that was pretty much like it. It was really uneventful from like the birth side of things from that point forward. Anything you would add?
Well, I just think a lot about our mom there's 3 of us girls. I have a younger sister as well. We have a younger sister as well. And my mom had babies very well, if that's the right vocabulary to use. She had massive babies. We were all almost 10 pounds. And I say that especially because she was like 5'4", right? And so
Yeah, she was little.
She was a very tiny person, but she had all of us unmedicated, really fast, like in theory, easy labors. But I mean, they did a number on her too. And she had episiotomies and all of that, like they did back in the 80s. But I felt like Jenn was the first of us to have kids. And I felt like looking back, reflecting, thinking your birth was probably similar to mom's, right? Like for whatever reason, you had genetics like mom, where your body was just made to birth babies. Now, I do think your placental abruption, the body's like, hey, let's have this baby. There's something going on. So there was probably a little bit of that going on. But for a first birth to move that fast, that quickly, I mean, that's faster than normal. So if anything, if you were like outside of normal, it would be that it went so darn fast, which I think is a really good thing for us to know. typically first babies don't come that fast, but we do need to be prepared for what are we going to do if it goes that quick, or what choices do we want to make, or like, what if I don't have 6 hours of contractions before I decide about my epidural, you know? And so I think if anything for you, it was almost nice though that you didn't have this big, massive plan in your head, because your body was like, no, 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 no time for that. We're just having this baby. So it's such a weird, funky balance of these are the ways I hope it will go. These are the way the book says it'll go. These are the ways it went because my body was in charge, you know? So I just remember thinking like, ooh, Jen's built to have babies like mom is. At the time, our mom was still alive. So it felt like, yeah, like, okay, you've got whatever mom's got in there because you just popped that 8.5-pound baby out like pretty darn easily, all things considered.
Mhm.
So
I would agree with that. And I look back now and like women talk about contractions and how painful they are. I couldn't tell you what a contraction felt like. It always so like I don't remember like a pain like that, the belly getting rock hard. Like my body wanted to push. Oh, I remember the doctor wasn't here yet and they told me not to push yet. Like wait, there's no doctor, like don't push. And like when your body is ready to push and expel that baby, there was no, you could cross my legs all you want. Like my body is doing, I don't have to tell my body to push. Like this was happening. And the doctor wasn't even gowned up. She was like in a sweatshirt.
Well, she was sleeping too. So they come in and put that blue gown on, but she was still in her sweatshirt. Yeah. I remember who it was.
Yeah.
We'll withhold her name as well.
I do too. Yeah.
Because she seemed grumpy too.
Sorry, I woke you up for my 3 a.m. delivery, but wasn't planning on it either. She was a couple days early.
But that's true what you said though. Like we laugh about how, quote unquote, badly you were breathing, but your body just kind of was delivering your baby, which is a real thing.
Totally.
There's that fetal ejection reflex. There's some different Ferguson reflex, these things that kick in, and you can't stop those. And obviously clinically, a lot of times we say, hey, hang on, the provider's not here. But I don't really love that in general. And also you can't, like your body was going to pop that baby girl out no matter what.
Can't stop nature.
We gave you Ambien. We weren't planning on it. Like, doesn't matter. It was going to happen.
Yeah.
Which is awesome. It's actually really beautiful to see all that happening underneath, the clinical part or whatever else was going on. So, okay. What about going into postpartum? Any little things about, breastfeeding for the first time or postpartum, that kind of stuff?
Yeah. Breastfeeding, again, like no classes. I'm thankful I had Laura as like a L&D nurse who had like some experience and like you had some education
as a nurse,
more than I did.
Mom.
And I was the one who they just gave a baby to. But breastfeeding was really important to me, something that I really like looked forward to and wanted to do. And so I feel like my milk was slow to come in. I remember this, but my boobs were huge when they did. I was so engorged. They were so big and so painful. And then Reese, I feel like she took to nursing pretty easy. It was painful. Like, I'm sure our latch wasn't perfect in the beginning. I can remember like getting terrible scabs like on my nipples. Oh, so painful. My toes still curl right this minute. Like thinking of like that first latch. Oh, it was like it was a challenging like start. And I remember like the lactation consultant came in and like tried, they try to help and teach you and, gave us some pointers. Cause again, I had no like education beforehand, except for like what I had read. But I'm really grateful we were able to nurse until she quit. She quit on me at 14 months and I was so sad, but she was really distracted nurser. And she finally just was like, I'm too busy. I don't want to do this anymore. And so she was done just like that one day, like no pomp and circumstance. She just decided I'm not doing this anymore. But that was fine. Postpartum, I worked full time before we had Reese. And so I had, 90 days of FMLA or whatever post her birth. And so my husband works in college athletic and pretty much has our whole marriage. And of course got pregnant and had a baby during football season, which is by far the busiest time of the year for him work-wise. And he also was not super comfortable, like with a newborn baby or a baby period, actually. And it makes me think back. There's this picture of him. It's like they gave her a bath, right after you have him. And there's this picture of him holding her. I know you know it. And he's holding her like so far away from his body. It's like not cradled against his chest. He's got her in his arms and he looks so young, number one. was a long time ago, and so, like, scared, but also, like, the sweetest look at his face too as he, like, held his little daughter, but also, like, no idea, like, what to do or how to do any of it, and so, he was supposed to be off of work for a week, but he ended up wanting to go to back to work, like, on day 3 after we got home because he was like, "I'm bored, there's nothing for me to do here, like, I just would rather go to work," which tracks for, like, our whole life. So he went back to work and he actually did, I think, do you remember when we left? So originally he wanted like a week of just us at home without my mom. And you were going to stay at Kelvin's, I think, to like give us that time. Actually, I remember you were not going to stay at home. And he just, I think it was like the first day we were at home. He's like, "So your mom can come if you want. Like, it'd be okay if she comes now." And so my mom came like that next day or whatever. And so that first little bit, like, there wasn't this, like, super romantic, like, just becoming a family at home moments, like, staying in bed together and whatever, like, no. Oh, this is good. We've already established that my husband really like, sleep is really important to him, and, like, I understand that, and so I make sure to, like, protect that for him, right? So I had this beautiful cradle that had belonged to us as a child that my dad had repainted for us, like, refinished it and painted it, and it lived in our bedroom right next to the bed because I didn't want to co-sleep, but I wanted her close, and that first night was really easy. We only stayed in the hospital for one day. We like came home the next day. They're pretty sleepy. Like they're not really awake and like ready to be in the world yet, And so the first night was like, oh, not too bad. Noisy, like mucusy noisy, like just their breathing is loud and stuff, but like not like crying all night. We weren't up a bunch. I was like, well, this is not so bad. And then like she woke up like night 2, 3. And I think it was either the second or the third night that Michael was like, she can't stay in our room anymore. And I was like, what? And he was like, she's too noisy and I can't sleep. Which, like, looking back, I wish I'd held a firmer boundary and been like, hi, my body is like in significant recovery. Also, I exclusively breastfed in the beginning. So, like, there wasn't anything for him to do. And so I should have been like, you can go sleep in the guest room, but like the baby's going to stay here with me. But I didn't do that. So Reese moved into her nursery at like 2 days old. And that is where she took all of her naps and slept, like where we did like that, like she moved into her room at 2 days and that's where she stayed pretty much forever since. So yeah, like obviously huge transition, but also simple, I think is how, like, if I look back at it, like, it was challenging and it was hard, and I remember calling my dear friend Betsy in the middle of, like, late, late night. She had a baby just a couple months ahead of me and being like, "My nipples hurt so bad, my boobs hurt so bad, like, what do I do?" And it was late at night, and she had a baby, and she came to my house with, like, balm and, like, all the things and, like, tried to talk me through, like, pumping and all like, just like moms showing up for moms, like, even though she had her baby at home, she was like, I gotta go take care of this right now. And so she showed up and, tried to walk me through that. But otherwise, I mean, the first little bit is hopefully just kind of the bliss of like you're feeding, you're sleeping, you're taking care of like the house and the things that still are like going on around you. Because even though it feels like your whole world should have shifted and stopped when you have a baby, it also didn't, right? Like everything is still happening outside of the door. And so we just settled, I feel like pretty quickly we settled into a little rhythm, the three of us. And that postpartum period, like breastfeeding was challenging, but like worked through it. And other than that, I feel like transition wise felt pretty okay.
Yeah. It seemed the same from the outside. And now, having been a mother, I'm realizing, oh, there was probably so many questions that I should have asked you. Or like, to me, I'm like, they're doing great. But I will say it did feel like you got your feet under you quickly. And the three of you just figured out your new routine. I mean, when you went back to work, I don't think you wanted to, but I think that you figured it out well, if that makes sense. You knew how to pump and you knew how to manage your schedule and your routine and how to manage whatever you did or didn't have to show up for Mike and its job. Like from my side, it felt like you stepped into it really well. And I do remember you brought up Betsy, but I do remember that little small group of women you had, you all were having babies at the same time.
Yeah.
And so while you
Yeah.
were talking about Betsy, I just thought like that to me was an incredible example of the power of community when you have a child.
Yes.
Like you found that and you cultivated
Yes.
that and you guys were we're all friends. So you guys did the work to create that. It's not like it just happens for all of us. It doesn't. And I wish it did. But I could see like how it impacted you becoming a mother and having those people around you. So it was a really cool example of seeing that. And I saw it as your sister. And then now that I'm older, I can look back, and now that I've had children, I can look back and think, wow, Jen was super lucky to have that in that season, because clearly you had people literally showing up for you at night. And that's what we need, but most of us don't have it. And so I'm so glad you had that then.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I think that's an interesting call out. So we left Colorado 6 months after Reese was born for my husband's job and moved to Oregon, where we didn't know anybody. We'd never been there. And I, like, 12 years later, I still grieve the loss of that community of women, because they were instrumental in like navigating pregnancy. Like, no, I didn't have an education and I didn't go to any birthing classes or whatever, but like I heard their birth stories and I watched them become moms, and I like lived that experience with them in some ways. And so like that was my education. And then also I think that there is something so formative about the people that watch you become a parent. Like I talked about in the very beginning, that car ride when it was like, this is the last time it's us, Michael, like we're a family after this. And it was same for those people. Like they knew us as Michael and Jen, and then they knew us as like a family, and they got to see that transition and that change in both of us and in our relationship. And when we moved away from those friends, that like group of people, I grieved it for a really long time. And I think I worked we've lived in 6 states since then. And like, I've tried to recreate that on some level every time. But there was something about the experience of having a baby with them that like formed a relationship that's different than like knowing my preschooler and building a relationship with us. And I still am like really close to one of them, and we still talk. And Betsy, I love her dearly. And she is still like a huge part of my life, even though there is distance that still separates us. But there's just something so formative and beautiful about the relationships that get to see your transition into like motherhood and parenthood. They're special.
All right. That was perfect. Thanks. I love hearing that story. I could hear it over and over and over again. And I love
Yeah.
those friends for you. I loved seeing them show up for you. It's really, it's what I wish everybody had going into what you were going into at that point. So, okay, total topic switch, but I like to ask everyone this. I didn't warn you because I don't want to warn people. Tell me one thing, the first thing that comes into your brain right now, the one thing that's like sparking joy for you in your life. Big, small, Diet Coke, trash, books you're reading, anything.
The one thing sparking joy in my life right now is sunshine. I've lived in the Pacific Northwest for the vast majority of my life, and April is like a terrible month if you live in the PNW, but here in Pasadena, California, the sun is shining. I sat outside by my pool for hours yesterday. Like I take a lot of my work meetings on my outside deck. The sunshine has given me life in a way that I did not know I ever needed, and now I can't imagine ever living without. But like every morning I open my eyes and it's like sunshine streaming through the windows, and man, that is very life-giving, and not just to me, but like to my family in this season. So
I love that for you. I also think it means you're getting old and you want to be one of those snowbird people or whatever they're called. Just getting old people.
That could be totally accurate.
I'll just text you when it
I'm
snows here again in Colorado, but I'm not surprised that's your answer.
Hard pass.
All right, Jen, if anyone wanted to reach out to you and ask you about your birth or whatever, is there somewhere they can do that?
Yeah, you can find me on Instagram. My handle is It's Jenn Rohrbaugh. No apostrophes or hyphenations. Jenn Rohrbaugh. I don't know. Do you want me to spell that out? Will you just put it in the
I'll
comments?
put it in the show notes for you guys too, but
You can find me on Instagram. I will tell you my profile is private because like this cool thing that happened is my daughter hit middle school this year, and all of a sudden all her middle school friends were like creeping on my Instagram, and I didn't like it. And so I made it private to keep the middle schoolers out, but you are welcome to follow me if you want. I share a lot about motherhood. I post pretty regularly, a lot about motherhood, what we're cooking, how we're making it through the day. And you'll see a lot of sunshine because really it is life-giving to me here. And I spend a lot of time soaking it up. So,
and we'll probably bring her back on to talk about having middle schoolers because she's the one who's teaching me what to do with all of my kids because she's a few years ahead of me. So anyways,
guys, babies don't keep. And man, I know everyone tells you that. Man, if I could if I could go back and like soak in anything, I would hold my baby longer. I would let her sleep on my chest. It would not have ruined her sleep habits. And I would relish the opportunity to pick out her clothes every day because she's 12 years old now and looks like, like pajama pants are acceptable for school nowadays. But man, I used to dress her so dang cute. But really, if I could bottle up and keep any age, it's age 4 and 5. To me, that was the most magical season of parenting ever. Middle school is magical and fun and also really wicked hard. But man, age 4 and 5 is like the magic sauce for sure. So.
Okay, well, thanks for making me cry right at the end. Love you.
Yeah.
Thanks,
Love you
Jen.
too. Thanks
Bye.
for having me.
Thank you so much for listening to the Lo and Behold podcast. I hope there was something for you in today's episode that made you think, made you laugh, or made you feel seen. For show notes and links to the resources, freebies, or discount codes mentioned in this episode, please head over to loandbeholdpodcast.com. If you aren't following along yet, make sure to tap subscribe or follow in your podcast app so we can keep hanging out together. And if you haven't heard it yet today, you're doing a really good job. A little reminder, opinions shared by guests of this show are their own and do not always reflect those of myself and the Labor Mama platform. Additionally, the information you hear on this podcast or that you receive via any linked resources should not be considered medical advice. Please see our full disclaimer at the link in the show notes.